Navigating an SAP transformation? We get it. By day, we work hands-on with people like you across the globe. By night, we share what actually works. Welcome to Transformation Every Day with Alexander Greb and Johannes Langguth, where your complex transformation becomes clear, actionable, and achievable.
What happens when you blend hands-on expertise, sharp sales instincts, and a passion for fast-moving digital transformation? You get Martin Scharmach, SAP's General Manager for RISE with SAP and one of SAP's driving forces on cloudification. In this episode of Transformation Every Day, Martin joins us to talk about the evolution of RISE, what customers really need to know about moving to the cloud, and why the time for digital transformation is now or never. We cover everything from hyperscaler strategies and AI readiness to clean core, partner ecosystems, and the mindset shift needed across both customers and SAP. It's honest, insightful, and just the right amount of car guys analogies. Let's get into it. Expectation for Sapphire, by the way.
Well, as always, trying to meet a lot of customers, getting the latest and greatest messages across, and having a good time as well, of course. But yeah, it's always the most exciting time of the year for us, so have high expectations for sure.
You're going to be at both locations, or?
Not at Orlando this year, because I was just recently on vacation in the US, so I try to manage my jet lag a little bit. Yeah.
So you think about keeping the footprint, CO2 footprint lean.
Of course.
Yeah, but that's great, and we see us in Madrid. And we're live with Martin Scharmach. Welcome to Transformation Every Day.
Thank you. Happy to be here and looking forward to what is coming.
Awesome. Johannes Langguth is always here. Pleasure.
Hey, as always. Hey, welcome, Martin.
Great. And we have with Martin, we could call him the groundskeeper of RISE in Europe. And you do this job already, I think, for 4 years now. Before that, you have been an account executive, a very successful one. Let me go a little bit into that early journey because I'm quite interested what led you on this path. You have been account director in your Swiss area for some key customers. You made a lot of deals back then. You were really successful. We worked together back then. How did that form the way you proceed now in your job that you have when talking about RISE, when talking about the benefits? Are you still selling?
Yeah, of course. I would say the way how it, I have to probably go like a step back, right? Before being an account executive, I was in consulting, right? And I think that's kind of a lot of the foundation to who I am still today, which is I kind of do consultative selling. So I'm looking into building a real journey. So usually I'm going for the term of 5 years, so looking for a 5-year journey for the customer. And that was exactly what we did back then at Nestle. I'm happy I can openly say that. I think it's publicly known. It's in the public domain. And back in 2018, 2019, we looked at how can we make a real difference to the customer over the midterm. And that was the 5-year plan. And it was our journey to cloud. And if you look at what happened after, you can actually see that RISE with SAP is has kind of evolved from what we have done back then at the customer, moving the entire ERP estate into the cloud, getting this on a hyperscaler, ideally as an infrastructure, and benefiting from the technical scalability, from the service level agreements, and from the capabilities that the cloud brings, to then move on and really go through the S4 and the business transformation journey. So that's exactly the storyline that we have built back then, and that's kind of still what I'm selling today.
From your position back then, having to work at that time, yeah, with the bomb lists and so on, where basically all separate solutions were listed, you probably were thirsting for something like RISE as an offering.
Yeah, I would say there is definitely a bit of complexity. But I mean, there is a certain level of complexity that you can reduce in that. I would call it more. I mean, it's more the internal problem, right? I think what was really the challenge back then, and the challenge that has now been solved, is we didn't have this offering, we didn't have this story, we didn't have we didn't even have the people, to be honest. So we had to build it up. We had to build up processes. We had to build up an organization, which is now led by Peter Plum, and this type of scaling up and getting a standard offering behind it. That was something that definitely helped. And I worked with Uwe Grigoleit. I guess he's very well known in the community on this project to get it into scale from the go-to-market side, and it was quite exciting, I have to say. But yeah, still every customer is different, and we have to find balance between the standardization element and the need for certain customer requirements to fulfill them.
If you look and mention now at the customer requirements, like what has changed with cloud? I think you mentioned earlier you do consultative selling. So have the questions that customer ask, have they changed? Is the conversation differently now?
Yeah,
would be great that you share some insights there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, back in the days, I would say it was really a more hosting conversation. It was the customer was coming with like an RFP catalog. This is what I need. This is what I have today. I want exactly the same or a little bit better. And the level of scrutiny on individual processes, the customer wanted to really retain control over what is going on in the engine room, if you will. And that has moved towards more of a conversation which talks about what is the system service level agreement, what are the system availabilities, what are the security audits, what are the SOC reports, what are the things that we can get, and how long does it take and how do you do it? It has really moved away from this very detailed exercises that we have done back in the days, where we also had to often, which was wrong, obviously, where we did adjustments in the process sometimes for the customers. Now it's much more standardized, and that is the part that has allowed us to scale to now up to more than, I guess, around 9,000 customers now on RISE. With customization, that is not possible.
Yeah, I mean, a big element that I hear from cloud companies is always impact partnerships. Still, what you just mentioned with SLAs and maybe SOC reports, that is still rather on the technical level. Do you see now that with evolution of new technologies, that the conversation has even further evolved towards kind of the application level, towards the capability level, towards the more strategic discussions, or is this on the horizon from your perspective?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, with the advent of, particularly with the advent of with AI, I mean S4 as well, but also now in particular with AI, the customers understand that they have a very complex landscape today. They have a very complex but powerful tool, which needs quite a long time to get to a level that they would need to run their business and to drive change in the business. And in parallel, AI is developing at a rate that is unprecedented, of course. So we see that the customers realize that they have to really get going on the enterprise software side to make sure that they can benefit from AI in their day-to-day process. And in particular, I would say more and more customers realize that it's nice to have a chatbot on the side or to use one of the well-known tools on the side, but where you really get value and where you get really efficiencies is when you bring AI to the business process directly. And I mean, who is running the business process? It's of course it's SAP. Therefore, we have huge potential to drive improvements, to drive value, but also to drive efficiencies in on the customer side.
I recently was at the customer that I met the customer CIO, and this guy had the landscape of his systems printed out behind him. So he built it up, over many, many years. And I think there are more than just the customer I spoke to that exactly have this. I'm being proud of what I have right now, and I think that's the best thing. It serves the company right now. We're fully efficient. With your consultative selling expertise, how would you trigger the conversation with such a person that is so proud of what he or she has? Because I believe the willingness to change might be not there for all companies, even though there is that huge potential. But potential is something that still has to be. That's the conversation I got. You have to prove it. And how do you tackle these conversations, Martin?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you guys know that I'm a car guy, and when I was at university, when I was at university, oftentimes I was in the garage, really fixing my car, installing new gimmicks in the car. So that was the time when you could do that, when you could still overhaul your engine, do all the cool things, and it was fun, right? Now, today, when you see a car stopping on the side of a road and people are opening the hood and they look into the under the hood, ultimately they don't know what to do, right? So yes, I mean, I was also proud to do the things myself and being able to do all the things myself, but do I miss it now that I have to sometimes fix things because they don't work? No. So I think it is a process for people to let go, and we have a real good community, and our customers have built crazy expertise on how to run SAP systems, which they can be and should be proud of. But in the end, does it make a difference to your business? No, not really. If you can hand it over and someone does it at the same level or better, wonderful. And I have to also say, this realization starts to sink in particular when it comes to hyperscaler type scalability, but also security, because there is a sweet spot, I would say, for hackers, and we know that there are organizations and countries in the world who make their living based on ransomware attacks. There is a sweet spot of a company that is large enough to be a target, but too small to run a full-scale security organization. And those are the customers that start to move and have already started to move, of course. But I think there is a lot of arguments, and it is, we have to. I mean, they have to let go ultimately, and it is the future, definitely, to not do those things yourself.
One thing from my side, that discussion that you mentioned, I had that in the last years quite often. I had 4 customers, I think, who were victims of criminal ransom hackers, how you may call it. The interesting thing is that all of them were on-prem users, which had their own systems in their own, we always call it, in their own basement, or at a, in one case, it was a hosting partner. None of them was in the cloud. All of them, after this experience, said, we have to move to the cloud, because we now found out in a very painful way that we do not have the resources at all to cope with the threats which are out there now. So from my perspective too, the kind of discussion about security, is cloud safe and so on, that existed, definitely. I remember them quite vividly, but from my perspective, it has not be that big thing anymore in the last years. Maybe you can evolve around your experience in that way. What I see, though, as a question now coming up with, unfortunately, political stuff being more upfront now when they say, like, oh, okay, where is then my data? Is it in the US? Is it in Europe? Is it in Asia? Those questions are now coming up. What's your experience with that discussion in the last weeks and months?
Yeah, I think there is a anecdotal story to that, and then there is also something that we have in the offering. The anecdotal story was that a customer told me this topic, exactly this topic. Oh, well, the American government, if we're on hyperscaler, they will have all our data. The customer told me, well, I think they already have it through some of their other channels, intelligence channels. So what difference does it make? No, but on a serious note, we have an offering for customers that want to be hosted in the EU. So we have this type of level, and where all the operations will be run with people with an EU passport. That's kind of the first level. Next level is with the partnership that we have with Stackit, which has been announced. That is also Germany hosted. We have still the SAP data center on our so-called converged cloud. Again, German data center. So there is a lot of options. And even then, you can go further and start with sovereign cloud. We are, of course, working with public sector organizations, especially towards the different levels of sovereign cloud, VSNFT, and so on. We have a solution for all levels of safety or emotional safety that a customer might require.
Another point that, to be honest, was my expectation to rise back then when it started was that the discussion that we always had with customers who were always a little bit IT minded, and you did, of course, discuss the IT stuff first. That was, and in many cases it is, but not, in my opinion, not as far as it used to be. That's, of course, taking away the focus from, in my opinion, the thing that really matters, the business part, the strategic part, the transformation part. What is your experience? Did RISE and with that, the discussion about RISE fulfill this promise or this expectation from your perspective?
Yeah, I might take a bit of time on this one, because I think I want to make sure that the whole story kind of is properly understood in the context. I mean, we get a lot of criticism, or like at least comments. Well, SAP is only doing this RISE journey because of the capital market. And yeah, that's true to a degree, of course. I mean, that makes sense. But what I always tell my customers is, why is the capital market honoring cloud? And the reason behind that is it is the superior business model, and it is the superior business model because the software or the cloud provider in the end has a much better relationship. Like there is like evidently a better relationship, an ongoing relationship with the customer. And now coming to your point, what does that bring? If we compare it to the past, where SAP was kind of a transactional company in the on-premise world, you sell a license and then you leave the customer to his fate. This is not what happens in the cloud. We are taking the customer's hand, take them on a journey, and we have a lot more influence in getting them onto the technical foundation that they need to be, to then be able to do the business transformation and to drive business change. Because it doesn't help if you have a 20-year-old system, or even I would say 20-year-old system with ECC, and you want to run a modern enterprise on a 20-year-old software. I mean, who would do that? I mean, that doesn't make sense. So yes, absolutely, we have, through the cloud journey, we have a lot of engagements with customers in all sorts of shapes where we are driving business transformation. Probably not always at the level where we want to be. We can always get better. But there is definitely always a conversation, not only about, hey, let's move to the cloud and then stop working, but it is, okay, this is the foundation to then do this, and this. So yes.
How did exactly that change influence your communication and the communication of SAP colleagues with the customer? Because for them, the kind of move, okay, now it's not so easy to talk about component A and component B anymore. Now you have to talk about different things. How difficult or how easy was that internal transformation for SAP?
I mean, it was a process. It was a gradual process. We have, I mean, internally, we have changed, or we have moved a lot of, or we have actually invested quite a lot in customer success partners, in post-sales engagement with the customer, to make sure that adoption happens and that the adoption is on track with the plan, which is very important for actually both the customer and SAP as well. I would say with regards to my approach to customers, in the first year, we had to really fight an uphill battle. It was really an uphill battle. That has changed. The conversation now, it's 2025. Everyone knows what the end dates are with maintenance. Everyone knows what is going on in AI. Everyone knows they have to do a lot of things until a certain date. So my conversation has shifted, and my statement, I would say most of the customers right now, is, you are late. And it is therefore then quickly a focus. I mean, we have to check the boxes, right? Operations, we have to check the boxes on which hyperscaler to choose, and so on and so forth. We have to work through legal terms, but the conversation is quickly going towards, what are we doing with this afterwards, or what are we doing with this while we are on the journey? And that's where all of our business transformation management tools play in, of course, with Signavio supporting the journey and supporting this whole exercise, and then building out the enterprise architecture, and ultimately then with WalkMe as well, taking the end user on the journey. That is really helpful, and therefore quite a common discussion these days as well to bring those elements in.
I mean, you touch base on many different things in such a, I would say, build up of the transformation path. You will probably have to have the, I would say, rather technical conversations, operating model. You probably go beyond then speaking about AI, which fundamentally is a business thing, right? It's not an IT thing. Yes, there might be some IT improvements that you can generate, but I think AI is way beyond IT. How has this like the many stakeholders that get involved in such a conversation, how do you manage just such a creation of the journey? Is that more like a project actually, or how has this changed compared to a couple of years back?
It definitely, this is one of the things, it's kind of eating the elephant type of approach. We have to start with something. I think it has become much more also a CEO conversation, of course, due to AI. I mean, AI is in every boardroom, clearly. But it is also I mean, we are still working a lot on the foundational elements with CIO and so forth, but we see that we get a lot more access to CFO, CRO, and CEO to drive the business change. So yes, we have to be broader in our engagement. We have to bring real real what we call line of business experts in to drive that change. But I can also say that we have set up in the go-to-market, we have set up ourselves that way to exactly match those roles to make sure that we get the story across and that we get the business value story across as well. Yeah.
I remember quite vividly back then whenever, for example, an account executive was claiming, the customer, I have problems there because he just sees us as a systems OEM and not as a strategic partner. You always knew, that probably this account executive was only talking with the IT back then. And this is, I think, a common topic 5-10 years ago. It was a common topic. Do you see that the sheer strategy, of course, you said you broaden up your field, but has your strategy changed by saying like, okay, RISE, a transformation topic, our main transformation approach partner is not the CIO anymore, but it's definitely the business, the CEO and the CFO. Has this kind of mindset change really happened, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, the mindset change, I would say, yes, has happened. I have to say, though, that it's not necessarily always a bad thing to work with the CIO, because a lot of the CIOs are driving the innovation agenda of the CEO, of the CFO, and so on, right? They also don't want to do IT. I mean, that's why they have a CIO. The key thing is to work with all of them to discuss and agree on a journey that will ultimately transform their company and transform their business, and not in the way necessarily how SAP is consulting them. We are not strategic consulting in the sense of the usual suspects, but we are here to provide the IT enablement and enterprise software enablement to make sure that this journey will be a success.
You mentioned hyperscalers in the conversation, and I think that fundamentally translates to the private cloud offering. And now a little bit of a provocative question, Martin. Why would a customer transition in a private cloud? Shouldn't they go public cloud directly? Say SaaS, that's the future?
That story has, or that answer has been the same for a couple of years now. If you have the buy-in from the business to do a more radical transformation, to really go towards best practice processes, when you have the respective process coverage as well in the S4 public solution, or we also call it Grow with SAP, then of course that's the way to go, and it is the absolute right place to be. At the same time, for a lot of the installed base customers that want to go towards a more step-by-step journey, the private cloud is perfectly fine. It has all the, it has all the access to the AI innovation. There is a lot of investment going into the product, and therefore it's also the right place to be. It can cover, as you know, some more complex processes which are probably not available in the public cloud. So we are covering both sides of the spectrum. And of course, if you fit, and if the public cloud is a fit, go for it. Yeah.
In the past, it was always for us also as consultants quite clear. Okay, private cloud, that's RISE, and Grow, which is public cloud. And the SAP had a quite clear strategy of approaching with the public cloud more the net new name customers, or the, let's call it, the non-producing customers, because they were always a little bit more easy to bring into the public cloud area than on the private one. Install-based customer, which are the real challenge, because it's always easy to start from zero. When you are not yet on SAP yet, or you have not yet a real infrastructure and seasoned processes, it's quite easy to do a greenfield and then go to the public cloud. It's much more challenging when you are a 30-year SAP customer with a 30-year grown architecture and legacy processes, and people who are clinging on that legacy processes because they do not know anything else anymore. Now you changed the flavor of RISE and Grow by pulling that kind of one-on-one connection with a solution, and said, like, okay, Grow or RISE is now a journey, which is, at the second view on it, a far bigger change that you expect when you first look at it. Why did you do this kind of reframing, and what do you expect out of that?
Yeah, and on top of that, we have also introduced the Cloud Business Suite. We have introduced the Business Data Cloud. So that's where the things are coming together, right? And that's also where you see that both ERP, both cloud ERP solutions are part of the future and are part of the strategy. Ultimately, what you want as a customer is ideally a cloud solution that is always up to date, that that fulfills your needs on the process side, and where you can run an end-to-end process, and you don't have to care whether it is a Ariba in the background, whether it's cloud ERP in the background, or whether it's SuccessFactors in the background. And all of those solutions generate a lot of data. And you want to be able to report on that data, work with that data, analyze that data. So you have the business suite view on the end-to-end process, independent on what technical solution is behind it. You then want to lift it to the next level, where if you have the prerequisites fulfilled, S/4HANA, etc., you then want to be able to report on it. That's what I kind of said already. And SAP will provide data products for this whole solution set, for the whole business suite inside the Business Data Cloud. So you will have the ability to run reporting on data products that are serviced by SAP. So this is also something that we will ship, so that based on that data, you can then train AI, run AI agents in the future that will be able to run processes and to execute processes, bring efficiencies and bring value. So that's, if you look at the whole story, that's how it comes together. And then whether cloud ERP is public or private doesn't matter too much. The important part is, and this is where the clean core story comes in, what is important is that we get to a higher degree on the private cloud ERP. That is important, because otherwise we have a hard time, or a much harder time, to get cloud ERP to the versions that we need to bring the innovation into the solution.
Which is coming quite handy in for me, for example, since I'm a strong believer in that the private and public cloud context should always be just a technical question. For the business user, it should not matter at all. Why? Because you always want to go into a transformation with public cloud principles like clean core, like you do fit to standard. You do not do any individualization in areas like in commodity processes where it's just not necessary. In the past that happened, but that's something that we want to switch off, because it's one of the major innovation blocker in the future. So you always start with cloud ERP, no matter what it is, in the beginning, when you realize, okay, there may be some issues with public cloud for this customer. Then you can of course still choose private for him, but you remain in that mindset as if it would be public cloud, because by that you can be able to have the same governance, you can have similar, almost the same benefits in a private cloud setup like you would have in a public cloud setup. And what's running in behind, if it's public cloud or private cloud, it does not matter for the user at all, if
But
his
Alex,
requirements are met.
But Alex, frankly, I think that also requires a change in the business user mindset. I recently was in a conversation about exactly this. Is it just a technical question? Hey, we can basically do both. And there was that one guy from controlling, and I think he was with this company for 25 years, and he had a very specific way how he wants to do margin calculations, and it's kind of a little bit of outdated way of doing that, but still he was so convinced because that's the nature of the business and he needs to analyze it exactly this way. So I think that also means that our partners have to be more engaged in that change mindset to drive the business change from the user bottom up.
Yeah, you're touching two very important points. The one is the change itself, which means every rise, every grow, whatever project, in my opinion, is a change project that you would have to engage change management within it, because you're equipping your folks with completely new tools. And as such, of course, you need somebody to introduce them to the tools and to show them how it's done. But on the other side, the consulting point that you are saying, in the last 20 years, consulting companies earned quite a lot of money by executing technical services. By saying like, okay, now I'm shifting you from left to right, and this is basically the job done there. Now, of course, you always should be, as a consultant, a true expert, a business expert of the area of business you are consulting in. So if you're an FI consultant, of course, you should not just know the component, but you also should, of course, know how best practice companies are working in that field of FI.
100%.
In that case. 100%, exactly. And this is the transformation that consulting companies have to do and consulting partners have to do. You have to retract from that kind of comfort zone, which components in IT have become, and have to go back there where the nasty questions are asked, and this is the business. And this is the kind of transformation that I expect from every SAP partner if he wants to stay and remain relevant for the next decade.
But it I think would also be a good question to Martin. You mentioned earlier that cloud is the superior business model because there is a closer proximity of content resources SAP in the process of executing the cloud transformation that customers aim for. How, from your perspective, has this influenced the partner ecosystem? Because obviously, if you have a higher density in supporting customers from an SAP standpoint, that probably we can't do that at scale for every single customer. Maybe there are thresholds, maybe there are, for most of our customers, there are partners involved. How overall, from your perspective, has that changed the ecosystem?
The partner ecosystem is more important than ever before. As you said, I think the amount of advice that customers need on when it comes towards the business process, towards driving the change, driving the business transformation, that has significantly increased. And we see that partners, especially the early movers, they have really adapted their business model. They also have to change. SAP is changing. They have to change. The customer has to change. Where they are really taking the ownership of moving up in the stack, away from their tool chains in basis, in SAP basis, and in hosting, and they embrace the new role which they have at the customer side. From our perspective, this is still we, as I said, we need the partners. They need to be there for the customer. They need to drive the change, and therefore we see this actually grow as a growing. When we look at the revenue share, we see this as a growing area in the SAP ecosystem. And I would say as you said, we are not able to fulfill the service towards all the customers ourselves. So we need someone to fill that gap. And that's the partner ecosystem.
And to be quite frank, how is your happiness and your satisfaction with the partner ecosystem and the way they operate at the moment? Where do you see they are running good? Where do you see they still have to catch up? Of course, I remember very well, for example, 2018, I think it was, or 2019, when you went to the DSAG and you went down in the venue where the exhibition were, and every partner had his booth there. It was quite interesting how different you can write and spell S/4HANA, for example. You've seen that with backslash and with open spaces between the letters and so on. So you knew okay, it seems like there's still a way to go in diving really in deep into that new kind of business. Where do you still see white spots which have to be covered better? Maybe not they are maybe not yet covered by any or every partner, but they have to be covered better as a whole by the partner system.
First of all, every partner has a different background, right? You have the partners that have always been consulting partners, so that's not a real issue, right? They kind of update their way of engaging, but you also have the deeply rooted hosting partners that, as you had mentioned earlier, have built an entire business model around it. And for them, it is, of course, quite a dramatic change. Now, am I happy with the pace of change that they have been going through? Not necessarily. I think there is still, and I shouldn't probably say that, but I still say it, there is probably still a hope that at some point SAP will change their minds, which is not going to happen, that on-premise is back en vogue. It's not going to happen. Very simple. So my view is sometimes the partners could be some partners, and again, some have been really on the forefront, but some have been definitely have a bit of catch up to do in terms of changing their business model, and ultimately understanding that they have to move up in the stack and embrace the opportunity of that instead of clinging on to a business model of the 1990s.
Some partners are not so much different than adopters in that area, and you always have the same discussions with some consultants, always or sometimes doubting, fit to standard, can that actually work, and so on. So I think that change that we were referring to has also happened, and the change management within SAP partners for their own consultants. Because what sometimes we forget is that an SAP consultant is not always up to date. He's in a project, and when he's there, I remember that from myself when I did at VW 15 years ago, a 2-year project. I dived in. I was living there more or less. My whole mind was about that. I did not really have transparency what was happening in the outside world, in the technical SAP world, besides that. And that's where we have to pick them up. Do you see myths about digital transformation that you would like to challenge, where you say like, oh, I still always hear that same stories again and they are just wrong?
Yeah, I mean one of them, and then I mean one of them is typically, hey, let's do it when we are not so busy. So never, right?
The right moment to start. Yeah, exactly.
It's never like the when you say, we have this project and we have that project and we just bought that company, we divested that company. That will always happen. And by the way, this is why you're on a 15-year-old ECC, because you always said, let's do it when we're not so busy. I really see it from the other angle, because I mean we have been talking very seriously here in this round, right, about all how things have evolved and the challenges, but we're actually working in a pretty cool environment. There is a lot going on. There is a lot of innovation. There is so much to learn. There is tons of material out there that is supporting us to do all that. We have all the knowledge in the world at our fingertips, and we can do what we are doing in the private life, which is asking ChatGPT how I should water my plants. That's what I'm doing, and how often, and so on. And hey, what is this? What is that? And bring this into the business world, into the business process at scale. I mean, that will have a massive impact. So it's a really cool time to be in. And it's a really cool thing to embrace this time and make use of it. Because for me, the next 5 years will definitely show who has been an early mover, an early adopter versus a late mover. More than ever, we will see quite a difference in the outcome of those customers from my perspective.
When we would ask you for an opinion about digital transformation that you have, that probably the majority of others would disagree to, what would that be?
I would say there is, I think, still a lot of people have this dream that you are starting an all-encompassing digital transformation for a customer that touches all business processes and touches every employee in the company, and that radically changes everything. I don't necessarily believe in that. I think it is, it kind of feels like the R3 projects back in the days, where all the processes of the companies have been standardized by implementing R3, right? And there you had a lot of conversations, and you kind of squeezed the processes into the system and did a lot of standardization. I don't think that we're in this time anymore. So the way how I see digital transformation is doing something end to end, but in a scope that you can control and that you can deploy in a period of time where you will see the payback. So I think just talking about like deploying an EWM, like a warehouse management solution, or revamping your finance with central finance and the reporting that is related to it. So I would say I would always go for smaller, more controllable chunks, just to avoid that after 5 years you want to go live and you realize your process design from 5 years ago is already like not up to date anymore. And
slicing the elephant.
Yeah.
And I think everybody of us knows those huge template programs. Yeah, when we have our customers that we started to roll out this template 10 years ago, and we will need 5 more years. And that time, business has changed, the politics have changed, and so on. I fully agree. Yeah,
I have a customer.
Keep it controllable.
Yeah, I mean, just for the fun of it, I mean, I have a customer that wants to go through a complete greenfield since 2 years. They are working on a greenfield template, and they want to be finished with their rollout in 2034. I mean, in this time and age that we are in right now, for me, that's
But that's not a fit to standard project, or is it?
I think the rollout is planned to be relatively slow. I think they want to do standard, but still, it's just like when I look at the time frame, it's just not realistic. That, I mean, just from looking at what will change until then, I cannot see how that will be successful.
I think, to be fair, I mean, if a rollout takes long, that's necessarily not part or a result of the complex system setup. I think we touched earlier on this one. I think it's important to have a change mindset, and change takes time. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I see now with customers saying, hey, I want to change, but how can I execute on this change without overwhelming the people, right?
Absolutely, but that's also where I see SAP partners. If you, as a SAP partner, have a customer who really wants to have 2 levels of code on himself and really wants to play itself, okay, that's a nice way, definitely, to earn a chunk of money with this customer for a long time. But in my opinion, it's also the need to step in there and say, like, listen, I know you could do better, you could be faster, you could have different expectations to yourself. Yeah, what you are up to do there is not making sense. And this is exactly the mindset problem that we still have in many SAP consultancies of getting there, nodding, and then executing the will of the customer, instead of saying, like, hey, you also pay me for challenging you, yeah, for bringing in my expertise and my things that I learned from other customers, and that way that you approach it is wrong. Sorry. Yeah. Definitely.
Martin, thank you for being here and all those insights. How can the audience reach you?
Well, I mean, I think the easiest probably is LinkedIn. So just ping me there or follow or something else. And of course, always through the SAP channels as well. That's of course also possible.
You had a internet show, a video show, which you stopped. Are there any plans to being able to experience you as a presenter or a host of a similar format like that in the future again?
If I see the need for it, I mean, we stopped it because we saw that that RISE really arrived in the market, right? It was really well established. You will see me if you want to see me. You can see me in Madrid at Sapphire. I have several sessions there presenting the AI roadmap, S4 and AI roadmap. But right now, I'm happy with running my area of the business, which is kind of intense as well. I can say that much. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. See you.
Thank you.